Call this special City Council meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Seward City Council, November 28th, 2022, and it's 5:30 p.m. Chief, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes, ma'am. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Tonight's roll call. Finch.
Here.
Osinga is excused for now. He'll be coming late. Calhoun.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
Barnwell.
Here.
DeMoss.
Here.
Mayor McClure.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We are now to citizen comments on any subject except items scheduled for public hearing. We have no public hearing at this special meeting. If you've signed in, you'll get the first opportunity. You get 3 minutes per speaker and 36 minutes total speaking time. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed in?
No, ma'am.
Okay, seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that would wish to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to new business. I would entertain a motion and a second to go into a committee of the whole to discuss the 2023-20, I'm wrong.
Agenda, please.
Pardon?
Agenda first, please.
Oh, approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
I move to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion about that? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on that.
Voting on the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda. Finch.
Yes.
Barnwell.
Yes.
DeMoss.
Yes.
Calhoun.
Yes.
Wells.
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda are approved, and you have no items on consent.
Okay, now, I'd entertain a motion and a second to go into a committee of the whole to discuss the budget.
I move to go into the committee of the whole to discuss the 2023-2024 budget.
I second.
Okay, any discussion before we vote? Okay, Madam Clerk, we'll vote on that.
Voting on the motion to move into committee of the whole. Barnwell.
Yes.
Wells.
Yes.
Finch.
Yes.
Calhoun.
Yes.
DeMoss.
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
You are moving into committee of the whole. That motion is approved at 5:33 p.m.
Thank you. Okay, I'll turn it over to administration.
First, I wanted to check if MC is on the line.
Oh, we're going to get him on
Yep.
the line.
We're doing that, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
while we're doing that, would you like him to call in for the regular meeting as well?
Yes,
Okay.
in case there's any, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so MC will be online momentarily here. And included in your packet is the same document for both.
Welcome to the GCI Conference Center.
That's okay.
Please enter your
We have
access.
Just takes a second.
Thank you. Please stand by. If you are the chairperson, please enter. You will now be placed into conference. There are 2 participants in the conference.
That's him. MC,
Oh, so
we're one.
Okay, great. I was like, okay, so in your packet is the budget that is also for the regular meeting and for the next regular meeting. But in front of that, I put in a document called General Fund Budgeted Revenue Detail. And on that document, you'll see a column in yellow, and it is the projections, thankfully, that MC ran for us till the end of the year. A couple of items that I wanted to note being the projections regarding especially other taxes, the sales tax, which is projected to be quite a bit over the budgeted. Same with the hotel motel room tax, tax penalties. And then the Alaska Sea Life Center, I don't want to say that doesn't matter what the projections are because it'll be based on real and then we give a portion of it back. So do remember that even if it comes in higher, 70% goes back to them. this year. So anyway, that number. So those numbers are actually quite a bit higher than what we had budgeted, which is good news, and then also under property tax as well. Where we see really a difference, if you go down to intergovernmental revenue, I wanted to explain that. The decrease over budgeted amount is the 1.5 million. That's actually because of the landslide. So that's the expense, there'll be the revenue, and as MC had stated at a previous meeting, it'll be booked into 2022, but it's not reflected here. So that'll be something that they take care of at a later date. MC and Sully take care of it at a later date. There are a couple small decreases under the next page under public safety. Not as many fees for dog fees, so that, and jail revenue, no big deal. Shop work orders, also there's a decrease there. That may be at the end of the year, may actually come up, but there's a small decrease there. Where we see a bigger decrease is actually in 4350 and 4351. The projected is, the budget amount for camp fees, dry and tent was $1 million, and as you can see, the projection is $795,000. The actual is $793,000. There may be some through the end of the year, but that was through the end of September. We don't really have any campers after that. And then also campground utility sites, $450,000. It's over the budget, which is good, but definitely the dry and tent. And it could be the dry being that would still be RVs, but also keeping in mind the rainy weather that we had. Okay, I wanted to pause a moment and just talk about that as far as camping fees. And I've heard from a couple of you and regarding the campground booking site. So the booking site opens on April 1st. It's almost booked, like within the week. All the campsites are almost booked by then. And unlike a hotel, you know, where at a hotel, if you don't check in at a certain time, they give your room away. We don't do that, and there's really some specific reasons why. If somebody books for 3 days and say that there's been road construction or they had an emergency or their flight, so, you know, whatever, they may still be coming on the second day. So we don't automatically, if they don't show up by a certain time, you know, rebook the site. Rebooking would be very problematic, and you know, we're going to be revisiting all this in this spring before we start booking again. But I did want to address that, and then thought if there were any questions, Madam Mayor, maybe we can talk about that.
Questions up to this point? Councilmember.
Madam Mayor, I do have a couple questions. Back on the first page, intergovernmental revenue, 4207, excuse me, 4206. The projection shows we're not going to get any more raw fish tax than we've already gotten this year. Is that?
MC, I believe that you were just asked that question by Sully, so maybe you can answer it.
Yeah, and that's just the formula that I used to project this. I kind of was looking at the trend, basically from the end of September 30th in general to the end of the year, and what usually happens with your revenues. And this is sort of one that got caught in a glitch a little bit with that. So really, that you only usually get like one payment that comes in towards the end of the year with that. So depending on the timing of that, but no, we would still expect that to be closer to that between $350,000 and $400,000 this year. So that's just sort of an error in the way that formula calculates. But we can either add a note to that or adjust that. By the time this budget's final, we probably will have a good number on that. We can maybe drop that in to adjust that and make that look more realistic.
Thank you.
Okay.
Follow-up or another? Yeah.
Another one, just, and I apologize if somebody else has already talked about this, why we're not budgeting any miscellaneous dispatching for the 23-24 budget years. when we've budgeted 10,000 up till there. Looks like year-to-date, we've got 7,500 so far and projecting 10,000, but we have zero in the next 2 years?
Chief, I'm uncertain what miscellaneous dispatching, maybe you could answer that question.
It's, 4322 is
It's on the second page.
yeah.
I'm inclined to believe it's a contract because of the set amount, but I'm not quite sure which entity that would be from.
And that's my thought as well. I just wanted to make sure that it's not, so when it comes to dispatching, we have a couple things. Is that,
MC, did you want to say something?
I believe that was, and I could be wrong, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was the internal charge from the electric department that we've just
They said that.
eliminated because they were the only department kind of paying in for dispatching into the police department, and it was just sort of something that was set up a while ago, but didn't really make sense because no other departments were paying in.
right.
I think that was just sort of a inter-fund charge, but I'm not, don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what that is and why that went away.
That makes sense, I do remember that.
Yeah, and I remember that as well. And that makes complete sense, because the 10,000 amount, that's the only thing that I can remember that matches up to that. The special services contract is a different amount. The 911 money is a different amount than that, so that would be my guess. That's the only thing it could be.
And part of the reason for eliminating that, as MC and Chief stated, is because they were the only department, technically could, if we're gonna start charging departments, for dispatching services, one, that would get really messy, but two, it would be all departments, because at some point, all departments deal with dispatch, and we chose not to go that route.
Okay, thank you. Did you have further questions?
I apologize that I didn't bring some of this stuff up earlier, probably, I just missed things. The shower fees that went to zero,
Right. We no longer are doing shower fees beginning this year, correct?
They stopped doing shower fees
Yes.
this year, but it's a pretty big chunk. Yeah, I was not part of that decision, but yeah,
Okay.
something to revisit.
We did start for 2022 for various reasons. Some had to do with tokens and some had to do with people breaking doors to take a shower, and all of the vandalism just to take a shower. It became where let's just limit the fee, let the people take a shower. It is something that we will revisit because, as we've stated before, that we will, with Maggie being here, revisiting a lot of things at the campground. So for this budget, this is what we're planning to move forward with, and we can bring back amendments during the mid-year if we need to.
Okay,
okay, thanks.
is that it?
Yep.
Okay, other questions? Councilmember Wells?
Yes, thank you. So in regards to the hotel motel room tax, I noticed that we have projected 876,000 and some change, but as of the end of September, it was only 320. So I'm wondering why it is we think that is it because the bed tax only comes in quarterly?
Yes.
Okay. So then my next question would be, since we budgeted 675, so we're projecting 876,000 this year, but we only budgeted 675, is that correct?
That's correct. So the projections were done just last week.
Right,
So,
right. And so, but if we look back at 2021 at 713, we look back at 2018 at 556 and 2019 at 591, we've all pretty much agreed that 2020, 2021 were just crazy years, and so we've talked about the 2019 numbers. We've only added one additional hotel since 2018, is that correct? The Gateway Hotel. So are we saying that one hotel is going to generate this much more in hotel room taxes? Is that what the projection is stating?
this is also the short-term rentals are in there as well. It doesn't state that, but this is where that tax goes as well.
Okay.
And because of the increased costs even of rooms, there's,
That makes sense. Okay, I thought it was just the motel tax, so I apologize. That was my only question.
I was,
Councilman
thank you.
Blas.
I was just gonna add that the bed tax, that's through this most recent quarter then.
I went online, and you know better than I do about the quarters. It appeared to me that it was due September 30th, and this was run on September 30th, so it
Okay.
would have captured September 30th's revenue.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Want to continue?
Okay.
No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so then going on to the next page, which starts with library, again, not much variation. Same with rents and leases, penalties and interests, and that is about our investments. We lost money on the investments. And then down to miscellaneous, gravel sales is where the loss is for that area. I'm sorry, did I?
Well, can you explain the gravel sales? Yeah.
The gravel sales, actually, I'm going to turn to Doug, otherwise I'm going to massacre. So Doug, I know it's out of the quarry, and that's it.
Gravel sales was that new one we just added last year as we sold some things out of the quarry. We really don't have a historical amount to put in there yet. This is only, I think, our second year of putting in, maybe third year, as we're going through it. And really, it just depends as we get folks coming in and they're bidding on jobs. We've had a couple railroad jobs that came in that we had bidders from different contractors to make the ballast rock for the railroad that goes under the tracks for this area. And so that was the part where it was a lot bigger last year than this year. But it's back and forth. We're really working on that quarry to build a little more there. We got a scale all hooked up in there. Electric is now to it, so we can have some heat lights, and the contractor has some workability there. But it hasn't been hooked up yet. It's ran over there. It's just to that point of getting the electrician. Pardon me, the electrician has been there, as the electric company, our city electric gets over there, they just gotta pull the rest of the wire.
So the amount that we budgeted for 2022 of $225,000 was based on the 2021 amazing profit, and then it didn't follow through this year, but we're going to project that it will happen.
Right. Well, we had 2 years that we had the railroad contracts there, and then we've had some things that we cross-docked, a lot of just plain gravel crushed up, and they made a sand gravel, hauled it to Nome on some barges. But it's not quite as big of an amount as it was, but there's some more of those that are coming on.
Okay.
I was going to touch on that. We did have them people coming back. They're going to be hauling more material north, so they're going to be working across the dock, but they got to get it from the quarry and sort it, so let's not touch on that.
Thank you.
So that's the update on the projected. As you can see, it's also the actuals till September 30th, but also I just wanted to touch on the projected. Going to the next sheet, the budget and actual personnel comparison. The first portion of it is the budgeted, and I talked a little bit about it at the last meeting, why, comparing the apples to apples, because with the budgeted, if we were to simply focus on the 2019 number, which we often refer to compared to the 23 number, budgeted number, it wouldn't be accurate, because in 2019, we didn't fill all positions, or, there's variable factors going on. So comparing the budgeted to the budgeted is more accurate. So you can see the numbers, the 2019 to the 23, and the percentage increases. I do also want to note a couple of changes that came in 2022. Actually, approved in 21, I think fully implemented in 22, but partially implemented in 21 was the wage study. That implementation. Also, in 22, the PERS full 22% is on salary, in the salary rather than in debt service, where it used to be, so there's more of an impact on salary there. And then we have increases in health insurance. So those are the factors that have been leading to the increases.
Sounds good. Questions about that?
And then down below are the actuals in comparison. And I just did based on the projections, did a projected actual to where we were. And as you can see, it's a 3% increase over 2019. And then, you can see it across the board there. So those are the numbers that I ran for this meeting. But again, the whole entire budget, questions asked, and they're prepared to answer too. So anything that you might have for us.
Any questions? Councilmember Tomas.
Thank you. Are these, so we're just asking whatever questions now? I'm just going to look at my little list, which is very small. Can you confirm the amount that we have budgeted for the chamber?
It is 300,000 and it's under, I believe that's called general services. Let me just find it here. And so it's page 29 of the budget. And it is line item 7801. And it says contributions to chamber.
7801. Page 29.
Of the
Yeah.
budget itself, I'm not quite sure where it ends up for a packet.
It is on page
29,
29 of 114.
right.
So I see, okay, so what is the justification for the increase in the contributions to the chamber?
The chamber amount that they receive is half of the bed tax. So I took a number knowing that it was going to increase for '22. This is before we had projections and everything else like that. But knowing the amount was going to increase for '22, then I used that number and kind of created the average and put in 300,000, put in an even 300,000. I need to go back to revenue too.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember
So-
Demas, sorry. I was trying to see.
Are we allowed to change that number, or does the payout have to be 50% of the bed tax?
We have the ability. So in this budget and for '23 and '24, there's a set amount, for various reasons. One being that we both know what we're budgeting. So the chamber knows what's being budgeted, we know what's being budgeted. And that's pretty much my reason for it, is that it sets the amount for a known number. And this amount in the budget is higher than what's ever been received previously, so that's the number I went. It wasn't that much over, but the amount. It could go up based on, the 50% could be higher, let's say in '24, but it's being budgeted at 300,000. So there's nothing that prohibits, we're not locked into either way. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Are we making amendments in this meeting or in the next?
The next one, because it'll be the first public hearing, and you'll actually be motioning to adopt. So
Okay.
then after that, then you start the amendments.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about Parks and Rec, if we feel like we have enough budgeted positions for increasing the days at AvTech.
It's a good question. We did, in this budget, include a new maintenance position for Parks and Rec, but that's a good question.
For Sports and Rec specifically, and thanks for asking the question, yes, I think with the two seasonal up to 9 month positions and the recreation assistant plus the coordinator, it's just a matter of recruiting those people. So I think,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Thank you. May I ask another question? Do we have staff? I don't remember historically how it's been ran, but do we dedicate staff to clearing Second Lake for skating historically, or not?
It is part of our maintenance.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Do we have enough to do that, you think, this year?
Yeah, and it is staff dependent, but we're short 1.5 winter maintenance folks, but luckily the weather has been cooperating lately. And we met extensively today about Second Lake, so you'll see some more activity out there.
That's all I have.
Thank you for having a list. That's useful. Other questions? This is your big shot. Questions, comments? I'm not specifically looking at you. I'm looking in that general direction. That's all. I'm trying to hit all the bases. No questions, comments? Nothing? Nothing? Nothing.
Let's see.
Okay, you can
What
keep
else?
talking then for a while. Madam City Manager?
I know we've said it before, but, we have time to repeat a lot of things. So, over this next year, Maggie and I have talked about, we will continue to meet about the department. As you know, she's been able to have new hires and growing the department. It's wonderful staffing the department, so this is great. But we know that there's some things that would like to change and plan to change them, but need to talk through it and before making the changes. So I anticipate that some point next year, we'll be coming back to you just to talk about it.
Councilmember Finch.
Parks and Rec, which number is it, 6,000 and 6,001.
Could you tell us what page you're on?
Oh,
in the budget?
page 41, I'm sorry.
Thank you. That way everybody can follow along.
I understand you've added the other staff salaries to 6,000, but if you're hiring more staff, why is the overtime increasing if you've hired more staffing? But it went from 6,600 in 2021 to now it was budgeted for 30,000 in overtime, but if you're hiring more staff, wouldn't your overtime go down?
We're actually we're still understaffed and we're not up to the authorized level yet. So, and also during the summertime, they work a lot of hours and, yeah, so that's really the reason for the overtime is a lot of that can be by the seasonal people, so we're not paying, for a full-time staff. So we don't pay benefits on that, but we're using the overtime to fill the needs of the
I'm
department.
just looking at the pretty good number jump there.
And another thing I should speak to that too, I want to make sure I'm correct, that all of the salaries went into one line item. Wait. And so, they went into the one, and so there's still some tracking going on, but it's all been moved to one area.
And I think this overtime's a good safeguard in case we run into a similar situation where we're just not filling the roles and we have to lean on people for overtime. It doesn't mean it'll be utilized, but having that option is important, I think. We just don't know what the hiring climate's going to look like next summer.
Do you have a follow-up? Councilmember Wells.
Yeah, 4610 on the handout, the updated handout here, under sales of surplus equipment. I was just thinking about how we approved the purchase for some new vehicles. I know that the fire department has not received those vehicles yet. My question is when those vehicles come in, do we hold on to them and have a big auction, or do we just do them one at a time? Is this $5,000 projection the projected amount for the sale of those 5.6 liter diesel trucks that we're replacing? Or is that not this area?
I was going to ask Clinton about that, but I would say to answer the process part of it is that we actually use, I think it's GovDeals, or is that who we're using? We're using an online place, auction place to sell our vehicles. Can't remember the platform. What?
Public Surplus.
Say that again?
Public Surplus.
Okay, great.
Is the website that we go on to surplus our vehicles. And the question, do we hold or not? Sometimes we hold, and sometimes it would go to, there's some vehicles that go to Parks and Rec. They're not, you're only used in the summer sometimes,
Right.
rather than buy a new vehicle at Parks and Rec.
No,
Some-
my question, I'm sorry, to interrupt, my question was, is we budget $5,000 for sales and surplus equipment, and I was just asking, is that $5,000 for the expectation of the sales of the trucks that we've already funded to replace? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, our last auction, we did pretty good. I think we netted like 30,000.
Yeah.
But we have different, it depends on what gets sold, right? We have a loader to sell. If he has some others, but yeah, there's just,
Okay.
depends on how much equipment.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Farwell.
Yeah, I'm sure I missed something on the jail contract, but if you guys could just kind of fill me in on that, why the large increase for the budget?
I'm actually super happy about that large increase. So, you have to forgive me if I get passionate about this, because it just ruffles me so much. So anyway, for years, the jail has been, therefore the city has been underfunded for about 50%. And this year in Juneau, we took it on as an initiative to really make awareness of how underfunded we are. There's 15 municipal jails. I would call them state jails operated by municipalities because they are state jails. And we were all underfunded except for one, but all underfunded. So Chief started, basically had a meeting with the chiefs to get everyone talking about the contracts. And then we continued that conversation with the legislature. The legislature did increase the overall amount of the jail contracts, the funding for jail contracts. However, we still continue to be underfunded, along with 12 are still, 10, 12 are still underfunded. And so we're continuing to lead the charge to be fully funded. So the increase came from receiving more funds from the state, but we should be fully funded. That's my mantra. We should be fully funded, and I use this as I'm just going to use Palmer, that Palmer has a state jail in it. If Palmer PD picks up someone, they take that person to the state jail. It does not cost the city of Palmer anything other than, think about wages for the PD and all that stuff like that, but the jail doesn't cost the city anything, whereas here, sewer PD and or the troopers pick someone up and bring them here, it costs us, and I just don't think that's right.
So what would the fully funded number be?
I'd have to look. I think it's close to 800,000. I'm not quite sure what we budgeted this year, but last year it was close to 800,000. And this year or last year we reduced the budget by one jailer to try to bring down the costs. And so, yeah, it continues to be an issue, and it is on our legislative priorities, again, to continue on. And then, to me, there's a bigger issue. The contract is written in a manner that does not actually work. It doesn't actually reflect what is done. It's based on man hours, but we have 14 beds, and even if one bed is full, we have to staff the jail 24 hours 7 days a week, and they don't pay for that. They pay for it differently, and the mechanism is off. So continuing with that one. Yeah. I like to see it like fully funded, and then,
Councilmember Wells.
So I know the answer to this, but I think it's important to say it out loud. Line item 4208 under intergovernmental revenue.
What?
Oh, sorry, on the handout, the new, the general fund budget revenue detail. The Alaska marijuana tax. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've heard it multiple times since we had a cannabis retail store here in town. And how is it that this particular retail store, it can only generate $300 in the budget? And so I would ask administration to explain to the public why it is that way.
And if I misspeak, I would ask MC and Sully to speak up. So it is my understanding, the reason, we could even take out that 300 because we actually don't put the funding in there. Because there is only one store here in town, all of the sales tax revenue is lumped into, all the revenue, tax revenue is lumped into 4,000. And part of that isn't just because it is one store, although there's that, but it's also how we receive it from the borough is part of the issue, is that we receive everything lumped as well. So we have not been sorting that out. Did I say that correctly, Sue? Okay.
So that it is true then that we are receiving
Oh,
sales
yes.
tax?
We are
Because I've been
receiving.
asked that question multiple times, and I tried to explain it. That was a really good explanation.
Oh, it's very true.
Yeah, yeah, well, I mean, but, it doesn't appear there, so.
And how the, if I may, how the Kenai Peninsula Sales Tax Division explained it to me is that in an area where you have one individual business, if you were to report what they generated or what they, in sales tax revenue, well, then it would be pretty easy to see how much they did in gross, and then you'd have a conflict, obviously, for that individual business. So I just want to make sure that we all know that I'm well aware that cannabis business here in town is paying a whole lot more than $300. So.
Okay, thank you for that. That's good. Okay, other questions, concerns? Anything?
So if I may, so in the next meeting, like I said, there'll be motion to adopt, and then you can amend, it'll be the first public hearing, a motion to adopt, whichever way. And then you can amend, and then it'll be December 12th for more amendments if you choose, and adoption. My plan is, just like we did last year, I'll have a sheet going of amendments and have it listed how it affects, has the financial impact. You'll see that at the next meeting, unless it can be given to you ahead of time, but probably the next meeting you'll have that information. Because we'll continue to make adjustments as you make amendments. The amendments, the earlier the better, because then it's a better document at the end. You have to adopt by on December 12th. Or you get to have it as I presented it tonight, so. I'm sure that motivates you to make amendments. But anyway, so that,
Sorry, Councilmember Barnwell.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay.
I just want to go back to the camping fees.
Sure.
Because I think we were, cut that short a little bit. What are the camping fees now for we're talking about the camping fees for the whole city, right?
Right.
So are there two sites or?
Maggie? There's a whole lot, but I know they're distinctively different sites.
There are multiple different rates, different types of sites. There's
The
premier sites are the RV, the electric hookup ones, and those are
65, I'm pretty sure.
And then you have all the way down to dry tent camping.
And what was the dry tent camping?
20? I don't have those numbers, I can look at it.
Okay.
But
I'm just wondering if those are filled up within a day or whatever you said. I wonder if those rates are a little low, or are you intentionally keeping those low to encourage?
well, yeah, and
different kinds of people?
we're not, we really want to keep them manageable rates.
So the part of it is, Maggie and I talked about it. Would we, could we increase the rates? Because I think for what is there, it's incredible. It's an incredible place to go camping. We know that people would pay more to come here. But part of it, Maggie said, and I agree with her, she said, I want to improve it before we raise the rates. There are some things that need to be improved, even potholes, grass
Starts
and
to feel a
areas.
little uncomfortable charging, when
Yes.
there's, not a picnic table at every site. Or,
Right, and that's the intention, that every site have the fire ring and the picnic table, to have the amenities that we're supposed to have. So I said, okay, we will not raise the rates. One thing I did want to speak on, thank you for bringing it up and jogging my memory, the credit card fees. In this budget, the credit card fees for the campground have been budgeted that the end user pays that, and that is a savings of $100,000.
Yeah.
So in some
Pleasant.
ways, it does increase the rate a little bit, only because of the credit card fee. So that's part of it. And then there was a rate study before I got here,
Yeah, so we did a rate study in 2020 and basically just looked at comparable or other campgrounds in the state of Alaska, and all we did was get to the 50th percentile for everything except for tents. And tents, I think we stayed at like the 40th percentile, but I mean, as we all know, Seward Waterfront's not 50th percentile. That's a top tier experience, and price-wise, we just got to the middle point, I think, which is a good starting point. But like Maggie said, when we get to the point where we enhance that user experience, you could probably afford to go up. And we've even talked about some sort of like dynamic pricing. You know, if you do VRBO, Airbnb, they charge a different rate on holiday weekends than do, you know, June 1st or something. And so down the road, we'll probably come back with some, I'd say, more modern options for how we go about, you know, charging.
And that's definitely part of that conversation that we're going to have this year and to bring back to you.
So, getting back to your reservation system, I know that the Park Service, Forest Service, the feds, when they have the reservation system, if you don't show up within 24 hours, you're automatically booted out, or can be, if someone else took the site, and then those people pay. Is that kind of stuff just too convoluted and would be a tough one for us to manage, that kind of stuff?
There's a lot of complicating factors in that, and we've jotted down every, you know, it's gonna be complicated coming to a solution that's gonna, you know, benefit everybody and address everybody.
So it's probably an issue you guys have, though.
Oh, 100%, yeah, you know, in this summer, I mean, we heard from people, there was empty Premier sites, and that's really hard to look at when you're sitting back here, especially if you're paying a similar rate, you know. There's a lot of ideas, but it's going to be a tough one. We can't treat it as a hotel, unfortunately. There's just too many variables that are out of everyone's hands. Road work, there's one road in and out, you know, road work, accidents.
Part of it is the visual factor as well, when you know, you pull up and see these empty sites, and, you know, someone could come in at 2 a.m., 5 a.m., we just don't know when. But we've talked about doing a visual, something reserved, putting a reserved placard there so that people know it is reserved. It isn't just empty. So people pay online, so we receive the funds whether they show up or not. You know, we hope they cancel that way it opens it back up in the system, and then it can be reserved.
The feds use a volunteer host.
That's what I was going to say. Also bringing back the hosts is going to help a lot with having some eyes down there.
We haven't had the staffing for that, but we're getting the staffing back, so we're determined to the casual meeting.
Councilmember Wells, did you have a question?
I was just going to say that we did have camp hosts in the past, right? But then when COVID happened, people didn't drive up, and then with the price of fuel last year, people didn't drive up.
Yeah, and the real bummer there is we lost some longtime hosts.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the other trick with, you know, getting new hosts. There's no good way to vet them, and, you know, you don't want to just get somebody who's going to be one by. You want somebody who really cares and is committed. And we had the luxury of having that for so long, but then, you know, COVID came along, and so but that is a high priority. It's definitely a good thing to have hosts at a campground. So. But yeah, I think this was a good strategy. They're going to get a little bump with the credit card fees. Some improvements are going to be made, and then we can vet it down the road here. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks for bringing that up. Did you have further?
I'm just thinking of things to fill time.
Did the credit card fees just get set up for only Parks and Rec or other departments like Harbor?
All departments have credit card fees. To be perfectly honest, changing credit card fees for campground was the easiest at this point, but we're looking at all options. Norm could speak to his credit card fees because there are a lot of fees there, and maybe how they can be changed. It's a little harder with Harbor because they are a tariffed one, so, you know, there are some things, but Norm knows all that.
No.
So we pay about $68,000 a year in credit card fees. It's a lot of money, but overall the whole city's a lot. It's up to close to $400,000 or somewhere in there. But gotta find a way to, I mean, I've been using credit cards for different things and I've been paying fees at different locations. So in my opinion, I think the city could probably maybe move that way and help offset this, this cost. It's a lot of money to eat. And between that and I think the electric, you can have a work session on it, decide how the best way to do it, cap it, have a certain amount, I don't know. There's a decision that you guys would have to make.
So we're starting with campground. We will continue, we're working on it internally and we will bring something to you. But honestly, campgrounds is a toggle switch we can just change and make that happen right away. And we also know people will still, they'll pay the fee.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Norma, I think I would like to ask you about parking at the harbor.
Okay, that would be maybe Maggie, but go ahead.
Oh, it would be Maggie, sorry.
I'll try to wing it. I hope you're out here.
I'm just curious because with COVID, I think, was it COVID that pretty much nixed?
It might have been a contributing factor. We just couldn't staff it. There just wasn't staff. There wasn't any applicants at all. Decision was made there was a couple applicants that came through, but there still wasn't any maintenance staff, from my understanding, as of June, and so the decision was made to bring those applicants into the maintenance crew for campgrounds.
Okay.
And so.
So I guess the question is, how much, is there any way, well, I'm sure you can, look, how much money have we lost or by not having that enforcement in the parking system?
Yeah, those numbers are.
Probably a lot.
Maybe about 100,000.
And I looked when I first came on in July. I was kind of curious, so we looked at numbers, and there wasn't much, difference at that point. But people started to catch on. Locals, it seems like locals kind of caught on and stopped paying. But there's definitely a loss, and enforcement's important, or at least presence. We have some things to iron out as far as enforcement goes, but.
What about technology in terms of trying to upgrade some of the meters or how that works?
So the question came up about meters before, and previous members here can tell you about it. Didn't go over very well for meters down in the harbor area along the street and stuff like that. And they talked about a gate system at the parking lots, and that was nixed also. So, they did look at different ways to try to make it work, and I think a body on the scene is the way to go.
It makes a huge difference. Even a truck park down there, which is tried to do for a little bit, but.
Yeah, the truck works kind of at the sewer thing, but now that's part of the camping piece now, so you don't have to do that. But we parked the harbor truck down there at the launch ramp, and it kind of works.
Staffing those positions is a high priority for the summer. That's the only way we're gonna recoup any of that loss.
Sorry. Yeah, I think staffing, if we could staff somebody to, go around and ticket people, that's, if we could get someone to take the job.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
We are also working with Sam Severn, our attorney, on an ordinance regarding ticketing and what we can and can't do. But, and so for more enforcement, because part of it is, it involves the police and what they can and can't do in a parking lot, and then what Parks and Rec can do in the parking lot. So there is an ordinance that'll be moving forward to you.
Other questions? Your big chance to delve deeper. No more questions?
I'll just make more comments then.
Yes.
So I might as well take the time now to really appreciate Suli and the Carmen Jackson team, MC, for working really hard on this budget. I was very thankful for that. And they, did averages and of everything and went through absolutely everything to take a look at it, and then have been great answering my questions. And then whenever I have a question from any of you, I email them. And I almost always have an email at 5 a.m. from MC. So it's pretty much like clockwork. I wake up and look at MC's email. But anyway, to the answer to my question. So I really do appreciate them. And they have the answers. So if you have more questions, I know where to go to get these answers.
Excellent. So the thing would be to continue to send on questions to administration as we go through this, but we will have our first public hearing on the whole budget tonight. We can begin with amendments at that point.
Can I just say one thing?
Councilmember Finch.
Having, like you're seeing, somebody ticketing, people parking, can sound a lot like the Anchorage parking ferry incidents, where it's not a certified law enforcement officer giving out tickets, so they were ignored and created a bunch of legal battles in Anchorage.
Part of what, Madam Mayor, part of what they have is they, I'm not going to say this correctly, but they are actually commissioned, is that correct? But they're not sworn officers. So part of it is their structure of government, that they actually do have the authority to give the tickets based on they're not police officers, but they're something else.
So they're kind of like code enforcement.
Right. So they have the authority to give tickets, and we have that authority to grant that as well. And part of what we're talking about with the ordinance provides that authority. Because as the home rule that we are, we can have our code enforcement officers. We don't have any, but if we did, they can write tickets legally, they can do that. So this is part of the ordinance that's coming forward.
Good question. Anything else? You may continue, Madam City Manager, if you've got anything more to say. This is...
I really don't have anything. Does any department head have anything
Yeah,
you
we've
wish
got all
to
this.
expand on?
Well, you know, motion, something for parking, but go ahead now.
I just wanted to say, if we go into a break, I'm happy to get with Councilmember Barnwell and kind of go over jail and the stuff that we've talked about that's kind of centric to that. I can help you with that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to know, though, so there is some parking enforcement. The police department will come down there, write in the yellow, in the handicap, they will come write tickets. There is some down there. Police can only do those. But it's just a parking lot when the people come in and they abuse the system and they know it ain't happening. So, and it's just about, and those guys are great, but redoing the yellow stripes and stuff like that. There's a little bit of signs that need to be tweaked, but there is some enforcement. But like I said, the parking lots is the weakest point down there.
And with the parking hosts and the way for us to, it's not a real term, commission them, is through this ordinance, that will help as well. But we do have to have the staffing to make that happen.
Right.
Any other department? I don't have anything more.
All right.
Okay, I'm not a department head, so.
Actually, you want to just, we'll have time for citizen comments if that's what you're heading for. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, then we could move out of the committee of the whole without a motion, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we'll come out of the committee of the whole. I'm going to use the gavel just because it's fun. Quiet gavel. And now we're out of the committee of the whole. And I guess it's time for citizen comments. So if we have a citizen that wants to comment, there's one. There's one.
Hi. First, I'm super excited to hear that.
Your name.
Hello. My name is Kat Sorensen. I live inside city limits, and I'm the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. I want to applaud passing on the credit card fees for the campgrounds. I think that's a great idea. I also heard my ears burning as I was coming in on the radio, and I wanted to clarify that the Seward Chamber of Commerce budget has been 50% of the bed tax for the prior year. So when you look at the budget versus last year, it looks like we're getting 175% increase, but in reality, this is us working off of the 2020 bed tax. So we were able to do some forward thinking and get some grants to help us get through this year, but it's been a lean year of us being able to work and fulfill that contract as best we can. So we paid some things in advance with some grant funding, and we've worked really effectively and lean, like I said, to make it work, but that is a non-working budget for us in the grand scheme of things without that 2020 COVID funding that we had prior. So we were in a lucky position where we saw the funding come through 2 years after. While most people were affected by 2020 in 2020, we were affected by it in 2022. But I just wanted to clarify that when you see that 175% increase, that was hopefully a one-year thing that we no longer have to work within. But we're almost at the end of the year and very proud of what our organization was able to do with that funding, and continually grateful for your support. I have something better written for tonight too, but wanted to clarify. Yeah. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to comment on any subject at this point? None of you people? Okay, then I guess I'll bring it to council and administration comments and responses to citizens' comments and administration.
No further comments, thank you.
Okay, we'll start over here. Councilmember Finch, do you have any comments?
Thank you for updating everything, and it's looking a lot smoother than Rigid was from June numbers.
Councilmember Barnwell, any comments?
No, I'm really impressed with the thoroughness of this report, and there's a lot of work going on that has happened here. I think I consider myself somewhat grateful for not being part of all of it, but yeah, thanks for all the hard work, and it's great.
Thank you. Councilmember Calhoun.
I'll just say there's been a lot of work put into it. I don't think it's quite done yet, but we're getting there. And just for some folks maybe listening out there, there are things that have been brought up by members in the community concerning the budget, but some of them aren't really budget issues. They're separate discussion issues. And we'll get into some of that, probably like the motor pool and some things where it's not really a budget thing, but things that we may need to look at as a separate item. So a lot of good work, and I think our next meeting we'll continue to see that work move forward.
Thanks. Councilmember Wells.
No comment.
Councilmember DeMoss.
Thank you to administration and all the department heads for just being so transparent with the process and open and just continually working on it, making all the edits and just being there for all of our questions and so available. I know that it's just been so much work, and I just really appreciate how this process happened this year. So thank you.
Okay, and I'll echo all of that. This is once again a budget that is honest and transparent, and I really like the effort that's been put in to make it so. And we have, Councilmember Barnwell, spent quite a few hours sitting like this talking about budget, and you lucked out. You didn't have to sit through all of that. So anyway, we've got another meeting coming up in about a half hour, and so with that, we'll adjourn this special meeting at 6:28.